Hello, friends. This is a Soul Shifts energy update for the new moon in Cancer on June 20th, 2020. If you are a new visitor to the channel, thank you for visiting. I invite you to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell for future updates and meditations. And if you are a returning visitor and subscriber, thank you so much for your love and support. So this energy update is a little different than what I typically experience, and I'd like to begin with a personal share. The other day I was hiking through the forest, and there is a part of this hike in the forest that the veil between dimensions, the third and fourth dimension, feels particularly thin. And when I was walking through this portion of the forest, I asked aloud for the elementals that I could sense in the area if they had a message that they would like to share with me and to the collective. And as I continued with my hike, I was guided to pull off for a moment, and there was a big rock that I was guided to sit on and meditate for a moment. And this rock was overhanging a cliff. There was quite a drop on one side opposite of the trail. And I felt a little fear come up because, it could have been a precarious situation. I was completely safe, but still there was the fear of falling. And after working through that, after sitting there for a few minutes, I was visited by an entity that I had not experienced before. The Green Man. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Green Man, he is an ancient Celtic symbol. He represents rebirth. He is typically associated with the spring. And he is also the guardian of the forest. And so he had a message for me, and I'd like to share that with you now. And so what he had to say was about stillness. And what he imparted to me is that humans often are preoccupied with their doing. And this doing and this preoccupation with doing things keeps us apart from wisdom that we can retain in stillness. And I'm sure that a lot of you have heard this before through various practices of meditation and yoga and whatnot. So this isn't anything new, but it was coming from a different source, which I found really interesting. And he showed me that a lot of the times in our preoccupation of our doing, that a lot of our fears arise from this preoccupation. And so he advised, be still more often and seek that wisdom in the stillness, like a forest. The forest is still, and there's activity going on, but there's not like this overactivity that is happening. And that in doing so, it quells any fears that we may have when we listen and commune with the stillness that we can discover, like what we can discover in the forest. And it helps us to lead a more balanced lifestyle because we're not being driven by this preoccupation and the fears that arise with that. But also, what he imparted to me is that this accelerates our raising of our frequency. And he said that the more we commune with nature, the higher our vibration raises, and that raises our frequency. And in that raising of our frequency, it enables us to do more of these things in a higher consciousness, the kind of things that we aspire to do, like communicating telepathically and by location and being able to see beyond physicality. So that was a cool little tip, to just spend as much time in nature as possible, and in doing so, it raises our frequency. The other thing that he imparted to me is that through this stillness, we are able to tap into the knowing of our heart. And true knowing comes from within our hearts. So basically, he laid it out like this, that when we are preoccupied with the lists in our head of things that we need to do, that when we quiet those thoughts and really go into a place of stillness, it quiets the mind and it allows us to really listen to the knowing that speaks within our heart. And so if we're feeling any sort of apprehensiveness or anxiety about things that we're thinking about that we need to do, or undecided about something, what he's saying is to go in that stillness. The stillness will quiet the thoughts, and we will be able to tune into the knowing, the intellectual knowing in our heart space. Because our heart is like a separate brain, but it works differently. So you have to really tap into that stillness in order to hear the wisdom and the knowing in the heart space. So 2 things that I walked away with in this communication with the green man. That communing with stillness, the sort of stillness that we experience in forest, it quells our unnecessary fears that arise through preoccupation of our doing, things that we feel like we need to do. And the second tip is that the more time we spend in nature, the better, because it raises our frequency and enables us to, because it raises our frequency and it enables us to hone our psychic powers. And what I find curious is that he would come through at this time right before the new moon, which is going to be a very potent and powerful new moon that is adjacent to the summer solstice and a solar eclipse as well. So anyway, take what speaks to you and discard what doesn't. I just thought it was a couple of really cool tips. So thank you for listening, liking, sharing, and subscribing. I wish you all much love and light on your path.